Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to be showing two more builds once again in Edge of Fate. So, the first build I have is a solar build with the newly buffed Oathkeeper and Hierarchy of Needs exotics. So, Oathkeepers, bow charges can be held indefinitely, gain a bonus to the bow's damage when released based on how long the charge was held, and it benefits the airborne effectiveness. So we're going to be using solar for this with Blade Barrage, Gambler's Dodge, Lightweight Knife, Fusion Grenade, and then aspects are On Your Mark and Knock 'em Down. So for fragments, we're going to be using Ember of Empyrean, Ember of Torches, Ember of Tempering, Ember of Solace, and Ember of Singeing. So with this build, pretty much, you're just going to be Radiant all the time. That's pretty much what this build is for. So weapons, you can use any kinetic weapon that uses special ammo. I prefer Mint Retrograde. You could use a rocket sidearm or something if you want. And then Hierarchy of Needs. So precision hits and final blows build guidance ring energy. Opposing guardians grant additional energy, and at full charge, hip firing creates a guidance ring. And then arrows fired through it release seeking projectiles which do more damage based on distance traveled. And then you can release any solar heavy weapon. But if you have done the new Desert Perpetual raid and you have the brand new heavy crossbow, I would definitely use that with this build. The artifact, this is going to be the same artifact for both builds. So we're using Anti-Barrier Scout Impulse, Unstoppable Sidearm and Hand Cannon, and Overload Rapid Fire. And then Flame Fiber and Freeze, and Diviner's Discount. Fever and Chill, Reciprocal Draw, Elemental Daze, Shoulder to Shoulder, Elemental Coalescence, Radiant Shrapnel, and then Elemental Overdrive. For armor, we're going to be using the Weapon Armor mod, and then Solar Strand Dual Siphon twice, and then Solar Siphon. For the gauntlets, we're using Solar Loader twice, and then just Fastball. For chest armor, we're using double solar ammo generation and strand ammo generation. Leg armor, we have strand weapon surge, solar weapon surge, and strand scavenger. And finally, class item, we have time dilation, bomber, and powerful attraction. So pretty much this build is just overpowered for all bows, and you'll always be radiant. So here we can try it on a boss. So the good thing about lightweight throwing knife is that you have 2 charges, and if you hit headshots, it makes you radiant. And then we're using fusion grenade. So you can just keep throwing lightweight knives if you need radiant. And then throw your super. And then the main part of this build. So as you can see above my super bar, there's a guidance ring. And then you can see it's shooting little solar projectiles because I'm radiant. And I'm not radiant anymore, but I just hit 3 headshots in a row with a solar weapon, so now I am. And then with the guidance ring, this is what it does. So it does even more damage if you're far away. and you can see it better. So as you can see, this is just scorching a ton and doing a ton of damage. And then they buffed Hierarchy of Needs, so you only need 3 headshots or 3 kills to get the Guidance Ring. So you'll just always have the Guidance Ring now. And it changes the direction based on where you're looking. So they also changed this so that it buffs all bows. And when they say all bows, they mean all bows, which means you can throw on Mobius Quiver, and it will actually buff the damage. So if you want, you can use this build with Void, and you can use Tether as a bow, but I like using it with Solar just because it goes better with Hierarchy of Needs and the artifact mods. So, like I said, the kinetic and heavy weapons don't really matter. Unless you have the new crossbow, then definitely use that for the heavy weapon. I do not have it, so I can't demonstrate it, but if you want, you can have your teammate run this build, and then you can be using something like Leviathan's Breath, which is a heavy bow, not a crossbow though, and then run a kinetic or energy bow, and Leviathan's Breath does do a lot of damage. So for the second build, we're going to be using Void and the exotic Gerfalcon's Hauberk. So pretty much, to sum this all up, after you're invisible, it gives you volatile rounds, and if you use a finisher when you're invisible, it gives bonus damage to your weapons and a reserve overshield that you can use with your class ability. So, with this build, we're going to want Devour, volatile rounds, and invisibility all the time. So we've got Tether, Gambler's Dodge, Snare Bomb, and Vortex Grenade. Then Aspects, we're using Stylish Executioner. And then on the Prowl, which not a lot of people use, but it gives you 3 fragment slots, and it works well with this build. Fragments, we have Echo of Starvation, and then Echo of Harvest, Echo of Persistence, Echo of Cessation, and then Echo of Instability. So pretty much this will just make a ton of Void Breaches and Orbs and give you Devour all the time and Volatile Rounds all the time. So we're using Buried Bloodline, which you can get from the Warlord's Ruin dungeon. It does have a pretty low drop rate. I think I have somewhere around 30 or 40 clears until I got this. But it is really good, and the Catalyst makes it worth it. So it's like a rocket sidearm, and multiple final blows give you Devour. And then this build is really only good if you have the Catalyst. So the Catalyst is that while you have Devour, this weapon will weaken. So anything you shoot instantly gets weakened if you have Devour, which you'll always have as long as you can kill some ads or pick up an orb or Void Breach. which means you can always go invis, because if you defeat a weakened target, it'll make you invis with Stylish Executioner. So you'll pretty much always be invis and always weaken, always devour. And the reason I didn't use something like Choir of One or something with destabilizing rounds is that since you already get volatile rounds so much, you don't need destabilizing rounds, because it's just a waste of a perk. So I'd rather use something like this. There's other weapons you could use, like Ruinous Effigy or Slayer's Fang, but I like Varied Bloodline. So you can really use any kinetic weapon, just try and use primary ammo. I'm using the new Pulse Rifle, and then preferably avoid Machine Gun, good for ad clear, Commemoration, and that'll get you volatile rounds too. So for my helmet, I have a Super Mod, Void Siphon, Strand Siphon, and then Harmonic Siphon. The reason I did a Super Mod is so that most of my abilities have the same stat, because there's not much stats to focus on in this build. Weapons maybe, but my weapons is 83 along with some other stats. So gauntlets, I did melee mod, firepower, bolstering detonation twice. And then the reason these are my stats are because of the armor archetypes. I have different ones. Chest armor, I have super mod, void ammo generation, and strand ammo generation. Boots, I have weapons mod, strand weapon surge, void weapon surge, and insulation. Cloak, I have health mod, time dilation, bomber, and powerful attraction. So here we can test it on some tougher enemies. So as you can see, we don't have any buffs right now, so we can just weaken this guy and then kill him. And now we have Devour and Invis and On the Prowl and Void Weapon Boost and now Volatile Rounds. So from killing one enemy, we get all those buffs. And then now, with Buried Bloodline, we can just keep weakening stuff and make them volatile too. Now, if you want with this build, you can use a different exotic in the kinetic or heavy slot, and then use a primary weapon for your void weapon so that you can not worry about running out of ammo, so you can always have volatile rounds. And then maybe have something like Repulsor Brace or Demoralize, but I find Buried Bloodline works pretty well. And then Artifact, same thing. So that's going to be all for this build. But before I end the video, I am going to show one of my old builds because I have reworked it. I find that using this build I made in the last video with Lucky Pants and the new Spread Shot Hand Cannon, I used conditional finality, but I felt you had to go up to enemies too much. So I put on Ribbon Tail, the new trace rifle. You can really use any special weapon, preferably something with long range though. And then I put on Dragon's Breath, just because it's a really good exotic. It's also good against unstoppable champions, and it scorches a ton of stuff. It's also really good with the Catalyst. So that's all for this video. Make sure to subscribe if you'd like to see more builds like this, and have a good one.